Hey, ladies and germs, full disclosure before this video gets started, and before you even watch the next one, all of the news that has been going around with the Rules Committee and Wizards taking over Commander, formerly known as ETH. Yeah, we know that we're tardy to the party. Bear with us, have fun watching the episode, have fun watching the next episode. Gameplay is still coming. Sorry this video came out so late.
Mike, I'm really glad that nothing else has happened in the last 2 weeks, because I really want to take this opportunity in our first podcast back in a long time to just talk about Forest Bear getting a reprint in Mystery Booster 2. I feel like it's a card that we all genuinely needed. I know it's a vanilla 2/2 for 2 mana, and I know that it carries a decent price tag because it was only printed in Portal 3 Kingdoms. But I feel like this is the thing that we really should talk about as a community.
You don't get on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, the internet at all, do you?
I mean, sometimes.
You know, 4 major cards got banned recently, right?
Well, I know Dockside got printed.
No.
Not just Dockside?
No. We expected Nadu, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one. Dockside 2.
Well, Golos got banned already, so it can't
That
be
was years ago. That was when I got back into it.
That's crazy.
You want to guess the other two? They were Mana Rocks.
Soul Ring? Really? Already?
Everybody wishes. But...
What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, and...
back for some more shenanigans and fun.
You didn't introduce yourself to the camera.
I was trying to. I was literally saying, I'm back.
I hope that we don't cut this.
We never will. I'm back, baby. We are back, actually. So we are hitting another season of podcasts. I remember last time we were doing the podcast. You know, did you remember what we talked about last time we did this? It was this year.
Oh, no.
It was when OTJ came out.
Oh, yeah. You had me guess the commanders and rank them or something.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
I barely remember that.
Yep. So we're going to do it again. No, I'm kidding.
We're doing the one thing. That's it.
That's it. No. I'm back. We're back. We're glad to be back. We just wanted to sit down and talk, because not just with the ban list, but just everything that's been going on lately. It seems like a lot.
We actually had to, contractually, we had to sit down and talk about the ban list. It's just how it works. I don't think you know, but as a Commander content channel, we actually have to talk about it. I'm not going to mention anything in specifics, but we have to legally. And then I guess we'll talk about
piece of
Duskmourn
paper.
after.
We have to talk about this.
And then I guess we'll talk about Duskmourn after, but
Yeah, so the ban list, it happened. People are happy, people are mad. I'm not going to get into details of people's feelings. I'm going to get into details about our feelings.
I think we'll say the same thing I said on Monday when I made the short. That a lot of people were going to have a lot of different feelings on this ban list. People lost money. People had their Commander experience changed.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're welcome to your feelings, but you should be respectful to other people's feelings. At the end of the day, if we want to foster our community, we have to be respectful towards each other.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you may disagree with us on our opinions of these bannings, believe me, I've lost money in the past on cards before. It's not something that we take lightly. But at the end of the day, it's just a part of how TCGs work. And I know it can be very difficult at times, especially when you're losing $40, $60, $80 on a card. But the truth is, it's unfortunately kind of one of the unsexy part of our games that we just kind of have to accept, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I think of all of this entire situation, it's the thing of it that I like the least. Losing the cards, being able to not play them, it kind of is what it is. A couple of these I think we expected. A couple of them maybe that we didn't necessarily expect, but it also it also makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? But people losing their money on some of these cards is kind of brutal. About that. But Mikey, let's get into the actual content of the ban.
Yeah.
On a Monday morning, the RC decided to just let us know that 4 cards got banned. I don't believe that anyone had any knowledge of this coming. At least to my knowledge, I didn't know it was coming. In fact, I just happened to be on Reddit, and I saw a post that said RC releases a ban, and I was like, okay, probably Nadu, right? Makes the most sense. It got banned in Modern. It's probably going to be due for a ban eventually in Commander with how good of a commander it is from the command zone. I was like, okay, that doesn't surprise me. And I figured, maybe we see something else banned. They've talked about Dockside for a long time. I figured, I don't know if we're going to have a conversation about the One Ring or not, but it's been something that's been talked about in Modern, right? And I was like, okay, well, let's see what it is. And I just remember clicking on it, and my mouth hit the floor. I was like, holy crap. I expected 1 card. I expected maybe 2, but I didn't expect 4.
Yeah, neither did I. I never expected these 4 either, mainly because I see these being like I've seen multiple people already say these are higher power cards. You should not, keyword should, not be seeing these at your everyday casual table. Like even if you're gonna play the joke of like my deck's a 7, like you probably aren't seeing these every single time. And even if you are seeing these, like I know, like for me, like I ran Dockside in Ob Nixilis, and my Ob Nixilis list, we talked about this last time we played, was it's powerful, but it's not like it's like a few. Now it's a lot more cards off of being a CDH deck.
I think what I want to do here for the purposes of these 4 cards
Yeah.
is talk about our playgroup, because I
Yeah.
think this is a good way to kind of, the Wizards and the RC says things like, well, you can regulate this within your own playgroup, and I want to give the viewers an example of how we regulate this in our playgroup. We do not sit down and have 3-hour discussions about what cards we should or shouldn't play.
We don't want to do that.
But I think we've also kind of figured out So, for example, we'll start with Nadu, right? We'll start with probably the least egregious of the 4 of these bands, and we'll go from there. I've only seen Nadu twice at the table, I believe, and it was only in your Birds deck because Nadu is a bird.
Yep. He's
no
not
one,
even
no
even
one
as a
in our
commander.
deck, no one in our playgroup built Nadu. No one's doing Turbo Nadu. Nobody's playing Nadu except for the purposes of the fact that it's a bird. I had it in a deck just because it could trigger landfall, but that was it. I mean, no one was playing it to do Nadu things. It was just it
was a bird.
support
It was a
piece,
landfall.
support piece in the 99. But I don't think that we as a playgroup ever sat down and was like, Nadu's broken. Why would you play that? The joke is the one night I think I removed your Nadu, 3 times?
Okay, so like I played it and you immediately were like, what is that? Oh, okay. And I think you had his swords in hand. You said, poof, 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 get it out of here. And then you picked it up. It's a proxy. And you picked it up and threw it. And I was like, okay. I didn't know it was that bad. He goes, get your 2 triggers and get your life and then get out of here. And I was like, yes, sir.
But let's move next to, I guess, what I would consider the second least egregious of the 4 of these bans, which is Dockside, which is something, for the record, I think we all kind of knew was coming at some point.
Unfortunately.
The RC has talked about Dockside plenty of times, and I think Dockside is a very good card. What I think the issue with Dockside is, kind of like they talked about in their explanation, is it's a card that gets better the later in the game you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you have things like food and treasures laying around. I think the problem with Dockside is, as Wizards, as they develop more different mechanics revolving around artifacts, like food, right? So much more food support in the last 2 years. Treasures, clues, right? Got a ton of support. Dockside continues to get worse and worse in what it does. Now, Dockside doesn't get played a ton in our little play group. I know you have it in Omnixless. I've played Dockside in the past, but not very often.
Yeah.
Dockside is not a problem. I know everyone knows they have access to Dockside, but no one really plays it, because I think all of us kind of share the opinion that Dockside is just, it's a problem the later the game goes, and it's okay, we don't have to play it.
Right. For me, what I see as Dockside is it's a game finisher, which is fine, because the game does need to end at some point, and I think if you're going to combo, which I've done multiple times, and I'm sure you've done a couple times too, is you combo Dockside into mass burn spell, like Crackle with Power, Jaya's Molting, whatever, and win the game. And that's fine, in my opinion. If people are going to, and especially since how much support we've gotten for not just, artifact tokens, but tokens in general, if people are going to let those just sit around and do nothing with them for a while, yeah, of course I'm going to take advantage and play Dockside and get 10 treasures myself. Thank you.
The most egregious thing I ever did with Dockside, which isn't that egregious at the end of the day, because there's the Teamer Sabertooth loops that are out there.
Yeah.
I put Dockside on board with a Displacer Beast and just bounced it a bunch of times, just blinked it a bunch of
That's
times.
fantastic.
And it's all right, well, it was... I never used Dockside to jump me ahead. At any time I ever had Dockside, I was clearly ahead enough that it was just finishing out what I was trying to do. But I never wanted to play Dockside just because I was oh, okay. It's a good card, but to me it was this is a card that's probably going to get hated at a random game shop if I go there.
Yeah.
A lot of our Commander experiences are in our little play group, right, that we play with, but it's sometimes you do go to a random shop and it's I know
you're playing that card?
I know the reputation Dockside has, and it's okay, is Dockside a win more card? Sure, but I will go on a limb and say I don't think there's any of the decks that I have built currently where Dockside is
Oh wait,
part of the actual strategy.
You mean you can't counter that card?
No, actually, you can't. It's printed on the cover skin.
Oh my! And that's been my biggest concern with all 4 of these cards is every single one of them can be countered, even your 0 mana or whatever. And I think that gets overlooked a couple times because not everybody's wanting to play the counter spells because they don't want to be the hateful blue player. And as a person who
I was gonna say this is great as the hateful blue player.
I was gonna say as a person who's dived. Whatever.
There's a word there.
I
Somewhere.
put my head more into blue now. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's fine. I think it you find the good interaction with stuff like that. If you're going to play a removal spell in black or any other color, I think blue's way of countering it is just getting there faster. And I think it also stops it from, you don't have to worry about getting around the indestructible and the blah, blah, blah. Or you don't have to worry about the trigger coming through with Dockside and stuff like that if you just counter it. And I think with all of these cards that we're going to talk about, any one of them could be countered. And I just that's where I stand on it, and that's kind of why I'm
I'll be honest.
confused
As
by
the
all
guy
of it.
who's probably the antithesis of you, in that I don't run a ton of counter spells.
Yeah.
I never have, and I understand the risk of that. I'm working with the risk of the fact that I can't interact. Now I will play a ton of protection spells. I just don't play a ton of counter spells. But I will say, to be honest, I don't think people run enough counter spells.
Yeah.
I feel like really a good counter spell can save a problem. I think it's funny because the one I do run is I have 1 or 2 decks that have a Fierce Guardianship, but it's only more of a protection than it is countering something.
Even
like,
that card's been
you
argued
may
to
try
be
to
banned.
play a board wipe or something. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to counter that to protect my board.
Yeah.
I very seldom use Fierce Guardianship to actually counter something.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest arguments now for these to be banned is you're seeing a lot more people wanting to just play solitaire in a 4-player game, which makes no sense to me.
No, I've never played
Shut your
solitaire.
mouth. Shut your mouth and go out. Go outside, take a breather, come back. But no, I think that is probably one of the reasons why these cards were banned, and probably a few more cards can be watched now. I think the free spells that we've just seen in the Commander free spells, even though they were literally made for our format, will probably be on the watch list too, because why not?
Well, let's keep going and talk about the next least egregious ban. I think is Mana Crypt. Like, I think to me,
That's
Mana
fine.
Crypt's next on the list because I think Mana Crypt doesn't pass the eye test for a lot of people. I think you look at a card like Mana Crypt and you go, that's really good. I think about, I don't know if any of our listeners watch any other Magic content or you watch other things, but Covert Go Blue has been doing a lot of videos lately with different people having them rate Magic cards. And in a video very recently, he had a Yu-Gi-Oh player named Simo rate these banned cards. And Simo pretty quickly picked up on the fact that Mana Crypt is very good for what it does. Not only is it 0 mana, it gives you 2 mana any turn, and it provides you with what I guess you would call the downside of potentially losing 3 life every turn. But we play in a format where there's decently a lot of ways to gain life. Like, it's not like you're just never able to gain life. I've played Mana Crypt in decks before. I do not have any decks currently that have a Mana Crypt in it, just because I was tired of the kind of Mana Crypt conversations that happen, which is like, oh, you're 4 mana ahead because you got your Mana Crypt in, your Soul Ring out. And it's like, well, yeah, that's exactly how it works sometimes. And so I just started cutting Crypt from the decks because it was like, I don't really need it.
Yeah.
And it's just not the game I want to play. I'd much rather have fun by using spells that make treasures and do that way to use my mana and go off on these big turns rather than, have a Mana Crypt or an Ancient Tomb laying around that. So the Mana Crypt ban to me kind of makes me wonder if we're going to start hitting the Crypt adjacent cards like Mana Vault or Ancient Tomb. These cards that effectively do the same thing. Mm-hmm. They're just
A little
slightly different.
Yeah,
Right,
different.
Tomb
I would say
loses you
different.
2 life every time you use it, which might be a little bit different of why maybe it's a little bit more balanced, is at least you're paying the life every time you're doing it. Of course, I don't think Mana Vault is as much of a problem as Crypt, because it takes a lot more effort to make it go.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
There are still issues, don't get me wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like Mana Vault isn't breakable. I'm just saying it's harder to break Mana Vault than it is a lot of other things.
I agree. I was gonna say something when you were talking about Dockside about the loops and getting infinite mana with that, and I was gonna be like, yeah, I mean, you can do that with Mana Vault and some other things with Dramatic Reversal and Isochron Scepter. So I was just like, that's where I'm kind of like, why is Dockside being banned when we have all the other
But to me, like
things that can
with
do
the
that?
example of Ice Crown Scepter, there's a lot of other pieces needed for you to set that loop up. You're just using Dockside as the payoff, or Mana
Yeah.
Vault, or that, or Basalt Monolith, or wherever those, you're using them as the payoff. You have to set a lot up. I think the difference with those and something like Dockside is Dockside's floor is pretty good just on its own.
I agree.
And then if you get it into a combo, its floor is near infinite, right?
Yeah.
And then for me, the least egregious or the most egregious of the 4 bans, because I think, to me, I have a hard time understanding why we made the card in the first place, if this is just what was going to happen to it, is Jeweled Lotus. This is the one of the 4 cards that I honestly spent a good couple minutes at work when I saw this, genuinely thinking through this in my head, because I was like, okay, we have to remember that the RC is making these decisions and not Wizards, right? So there is a world where Wizards prints a card without any consultation of the RC or caring about how good it is. We've seen this many times over the course of our format. But it makes me wonder if Jeweled Lotus is literally and only playable in Commander. Yes, I'm aware that it's a part of a Legacy deck that uses it with Doubling Q, but we won't talk about that. That's Legacy. Legacy is its own format.
Exactly.
Like, how else could we fix this problem? Because to me, I mean, I might catch some flack for saying this, I don't think Jeweled Lotus is that bad.
No, I don't think so
It's a one-time way to cheat out your commander or get it out quicker. It's the mana is literally only usable for your commander, and if I recall correctly, can you only use it to cast your commander?
Yes, that's what it
So
says.
you can't even use it for your commander's abilities. It's not even like you could use it for a commander who has an ability that uses mana to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, you can get it back from your graveyard and use it again, but to me, it's like it still is fallible to counter spells and counterplay and things like that.
Exactly.
You're still fallible. It is a mana ability, so I guess it's not shut off by other things. But there are other ways to.
I mean, what's the red mana spell that destroys artifact?
I mean, you still Vandal Blast range.
Thank you.
And what I think the
like,
only thing I like
easily.
about Lotus, the Jeweled Lotus, is at least I mean I could still crack the Lotus in response to the Vandal Blast. I just can't do anything with the mana.
Exactly.
Like, it's not like a treasure where once you Vandal Blast me, I'm just going to sack all the treasures and do something with them.
Right.
I get that Jeweled Lotus is a problem. I'm not saying that Jeweled Lotus is perfectly pedestrian and that there's nothing crazy that can be done with Jeweled Lotus. Because if you've never seen somebody throw out their a 5 or 6 mana commander on turn 2, like, it's brutal for a game.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's like, I completely understand. Like, I've seen people get Niv Mizzet down on like turn 2, or like those 5-6 mana commanders down on turn 2 with this, or turn 7 or 7 or 8 mana commander down on turn 2 or 3. Let's say you go land Soul Ring, and then turn 2 you do land Jeweled Lotus. You're now at 7 mana on turn 2. Like, I can understand. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Jeweled Lotus is just a bargain bin artifact. But it's the least egregious of the 4, because at least it's kind of reined in already.
It is, and it's reined into the format.
And
that
if you
we're
want
already
to complain
playing.
about Jeweled Lotus, then you kind of still have to complain about Soul Ring and all the other artifacts that do the exact same thing.
And not only that, you'd have to like start arguing with what the RC gave as their explanation for the ban of Jeweled Lotus alone. Just Jeweled Lotus alone.
So I have it here on the screen.
You
if
got
you
it,
want
or
to
you
read
want me to get it?
Do you read it?
Okay. So it says Jeweled Lotus dash. Another card that can give you 5 mana on turn 2. Jeweled Lotus does it without even needing a good hand. Though, you're restricted in what you can do with the mana. 4 and 5 mana commanders can pack a significant punch nowadays, often drawing cards and make up one-shot mana. And defensive abilities such as Ward can't be interacted with that early in the game. Before you go, I don't get that explanation when we have Soul Ring.
Yeah, I to me it was a really moot point, because we will link the band announcement. If you have yet to read it, we'll link it down in the description.
Don't live
Just
under
so-
a rock anymore.
Just so you can. But the paragraph after we talk about all 3 of the cards, it said, we also talk about the elephant in the room. We're not banning Soul Ring and have no desire to. Yes, based on the criteria we've talked about here, it would be banned. Soul Ring is the iconic card of the format, and it's sufficiently tied to the identity of the format that it defines the laws of physics in a way that no other card does. Continuing, banning Soul Ring would be fundamentally changing the identity of the format. We aren't trying to eliminate all explosive starts. It happening once in a while is exciting, and removing the other 3 cards geometrically reduces the number of hands capable of substantial above curve mana generation in the first few turns. To me, when I read that paragraph, that's like me saying something off the wall and then putting up my soapbox and trying to defend it while losing the logic of trying to defend it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get it. Soul Ring's in every precon. We've made this decision. It would be brutal to try to ban Soul Ring. I get it. Don't get me wrong. But let's call a spade a spade.
Yep.
Like, yes, Soul Ring's fun, but I think you've noticed it just as I do. Anytime anyone starts with a Soul Ring in the first 2 turns, people go after. Like, it's a joke. Like, oh, they played Soul Ring, we gotta go after them. Like,
but you have to, even if their hand sucks after that. Even if they plead to you, like, oh my gosh, I can't play anything else. All I had was Soul Ring, so I kept this hand. It's like, well, first off, you shouldn't have done that. But second, like, that's the point, though, right? We're going to put Soul Ring on this pedestal.
like, no.
Pedestal of where we want it to be because we've put it in every single precon. It's going to continue to be put in precons. It's not going to be banned now because the rules committee says that it's not. Then you're going to have to live with these words now. And the new player that comes in with a precon and says, oh, cool, I'm going to play this Soul Ring. I see that it gives me 2 mana and I only had to pay 1 for it. And it's like, cool, fun fact, buddy. I know it's your first game, but you're about to get pounded. Like, there's no way around it.
I think it's a hard conversation to have because there's no logical solution to this problem.
Right.
We can't ban all fast mana because now you have to have a conversation about mana rocks in general, and that's just a terrible conversation that no one wants to have. Because if you have the conversation about mana rocks, you then have to have the conversation about ramp, and that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to start that rabbit hole, but what I'm trying to say is that it feels a little tone deaf to me that we put Mana Corrupt and Jeweled Lotus in this mythical box that's super overpowered, but then we will just cast Soul Ring off to the side and say, oh, but it's fine. We all love Soul Ring. He didn't mean it. It's fine. But it's like, it's not. It's doing the exact same thing. And the problem is everybody has a Soul Ring. In fact, I think it's hilarious that I have decks that I do not run Soul Ring in. Yeah. And I constantly have people ask, why didn't you put Soul Ring in this deck? And it's like, isn't it interesting that we all lovingly hate the card, but then you don't put it in a deck and people are like, why no Soul Ring?
I think it's so weird. I was thinking about it when we were talking about Dockside and everything. Like, I feel like if the card read, you just get a mana of any color in your mana pool instead of a treasure, we'd be on a different conversation. Actually, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I think it's still busted, but it's less busted.
Yeah.
And the only reason I think it's not completely scotch-free is because you could still loop it the exact same way.
But you can do that with any
But
card.
I think the only thing to me that pushes Dockside slightly over the edge is just how much treasure support there is now.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like I said, I think Dockside is genuinely already tough. But it's just like, with all that extra support, it's just brutal. I mean, I think Dockside is one of those cards we could talk about for 2 hours about different ways to break it, which, is what it is. But I think we should probably just try our best to wrap up our feelings on this ban list. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sad to see cards go, like, because I think we get such few bans in Commander that anytime something gets banned, it just feels like it warps our entire world for 4 weeks while everybody deals with the bannings.
Yeah.
The thing I want to last mention when we wrap up our ban conversation is I had a conversation with somebody who asked me, well, what if the RC gave us a watch list of cards that they're really seriously considering banning? Would that change any of the bad feelings? And I said, I don't genuinely know, because my thought experiment, I think I told you and I told a few other people, was, let's say today, right, the rules committee put out this ban announcement and they said, okay, One Ring's on the watch list, Mana Vault's on the watch list, Thassa's Oracle's on the watch list. Let's say they say those 3 are on the watch list. Okay, they're quote unquote. I'm not saying that One Ring deserves to be in the same sentence as those other 2 cards, because I don't think so genuinely, personally. But let's just, for the sake of examples, say that today they say those 3 on the watch list. What genuinely happens to the price of those 3 cards today? I think the price drops. Because I think there are going to be people who say, if it's inevitable, I'm getting out now, and they're just going to move their cards and the market's going to crash on those cards. Now, there will still be people who say, well, I'm going to play it till it's banned. I'm going to enjoy my cards.
Yeah.
And to each their own. But I'm just saying what I genuinely think what would happen is if you were to look at that price drop overall from being legal to banned on those cards, I think you would lose about half the price drop tomorrow when people realize that it's on the watch list and that these cards are going to be leaving eventually because no one's going to want to hold on to them investment wise. And then when the ban list finally comes out, then it drops the rest of the way when it's no longer.
Yeah, and I think that leads to 2 points. I think one, if there was a watch list, is the RC going to use the CAG now? Are they actually going to use the people that they're trying to feed from? Now, we don't have to get into that conversation. I don't really want to because there's a lot of hard feelings on that one too. But, like, are they actually going to utilize resources to see these cards in play rather than be like, oh, that card has been a problem for a while now, so we should probably ban it. And I'm guessing that's what they did with Dockside and Mana Crypt. Jewel's Lotus, I'm still confused on. Nadu, you only banned it because it was banned in Modern. Good job.
Mikey,
you jumped that ship.
Rule 0 conversations fix everything.
Absolutely. They don't happen. They just don't happen.
I'll tell you, from my personal experience, I can count on the number on one hand the amount of times I've had a legitimate Rule 0 conversation.
Yeah.
I don't mean, because what we do in our play group a lot, which is probably to our detriment more than anything else, and what happens a lot in a lot of shops is, I'm playing X, what are you playing?
Yep. And that's exactly
Don't explain what their decks do. No one says what power level they're at. They're just saying, oh, I'm going to play X. That's what I'm playing. And so it's like, what Rule 0 conversation?
Yep.
Other than the ban list, I mean, what else are we adhering to as a format?
Right.
You know?
Well, because we had this conversation multiple times about what did we talk about? We talked about somebody in Urza. It was like Kalain and Urza. We had that conversation for some reason. I don't remember what brought that up.
Oh, you decided that you wanted to have a slight jab fest on
Yes.
on our
We
group
were having
chat.
fun.
And so we were talking about power levels and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And I said, to me, I've always believed that how you build a deck makes a difference to the power level of a commander. Because I said, for example, you mentioned Kalain, a Rakdos Treasures commander. I said you could build a $3,000 Kalain deck that could be way better than a $10 Urza deck that I threw together.
Exactly.
But if we build both of those up to their highest potentials of budget, Urza will be better than Kalain. So I said it comes down to what's physically in the deck, because you hear these jokes a lot of the times where someone will bring an Atraxa to the table and be like, oh, but it's not that Atraxa, it's just like Bunny Tribal or something.
Right.
But the truth is it matters. And so it's like, it's tough for me to talk about some of these cards sometimes because it's so much of their context matters for how they're used. My other wonder about the watch list is, does a card have to be banned once it hits the watch list? Because what happens if a card hits the watch list for 5 weeks and then it gets taken off the watch list? People still lost money.
Yep.
So you know what I mean? What do we do? There's still going to be bad feelings. There's still going to be there's still going to be vitriol in the community. There's still going to be conversations going to be had. I don't see a world where any part of this banning process isn't just bad feelings or BM for somebody. It's gonna suck, but the question is, we got to make sure we're banning cards for the right reasons and make sure that we're steadfast on that. And the rest of it is what it is. I know it's tough with a card like Mana Crypt, which lost over half its value, if not more. But we have to remember there are other games out there that bans come completely out of nowhere, almost completely out of nowhere, where cards go from $150 to $10, every quarter. You know what I mean? There are games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where cards get reprinted out of nowhere too, or cards get reprinted and congratulations, your card went from $100 to $30, just like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are other games out there that deal with this a lot worse than we do, especially in something like Standard as well.
Yep.
We've dealt with this in the past, right? But I think we get kind of insulated in our format because almost everything's legal, and that's the point of our format, is that everything's legal. But when everything's legal, we still have to be willing to take care of it sometimes.
That's what's going to lead me to my second point. First off, it's a game. And I think we as a community need to remember that. It's a game.
It's a game?
It's a game, even though you have stacks and stacks and rows back
Wait, this
there.
isn't my entire identity, that all I do is this?
This might be, but it's
okay.
still a game at the end of the day. Compared to the beginning of the day, it's still a game. You might lose money on it. Whoop-de-doo. You didn't pay, hopefully, full price for that card. Or if you did, then that's on you. Like, you are still... If you put it in a deck and you played it, you got to do what you paid money to do, which was experience the card, because you were playing the game. You experienced the game.
We say this respectfully. Like, this isn't like a middle finger to you as the viewer.
I've done it.
And say, screw you, you got what you paid for.
No.
It's just the truth of how trading card games work. I feel like we have to all kind of understand the arena that we play in.
And I think you just said a word that we don't do anymore. as a community is we don't trade, we buy
Yeah.
and sell, and I think that's a way that people can say,
No,
oh, we trade.
no one sells things anymore. What are you talking about?
And I think if that's a way that the community has kind of like shifted, and it's like that's how we trade now. But it's like not really. Like our friend Josh will literally is the one to get like 10 Childreds because he bought more Dominaria United than anybody needed to, but he's okay with just shelling them out rather than selling them. And I'm like, that's amazing. I want to be like that, you know. I want to be okay with doing that. And there are people
how are we supposed to 10x our money if we don't pull Childreds?
He could have, but I think he did because he got his experience back out of it. He didn't just flip those cards and say, okay, cool, now I have $200. What do I do? And it's like, go buy more cards.
Well, here's what I think is interesting about this specific conversation is instead of cherry picking another game which has a completely different resource system and all that, let's compare this to Standard, right?
Yeah.
A format that exists. It's still considered to be a premier format, and it rotates. Well, now every 3 years, which I think is a mistake, but we can have that conversation another time.
We don't need to talk about this.
The format does rotate, which means eventually the $80 Shieldred that exists in our format will eventually not be $80.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to have the same conversation, which is does it mean the Shieldred's not worth $80 because it rotates out of Standard? You know, that I don't really want to talk about this, but I'm just trying to use another example.
No, I think it's a perfect example because, like, if we are going to, again, put Commander on a high pedestal and say that it is probably the most popular format that Magic has, then why are cards losing their value because they're rotating out of Standard, or because they got banned in Modern, or because Naughty was like, what?
Or because Modern Horizons 4 comes out and makes everything cracked, and so we have to change our decks in Modern, you know.
Well, because, like, look at Nadu. When it was in Modern for the 2 minutes that it was in Modern, like, it was like, what, a $30 card or something like that?
Yeah.
It get banned. It got
Now,
banned,
for the record,
and it was like
it was a
$7.
$30 card that made cards around it more expensive. It
Yes.
wasn't like it was just that $30 card.
No, but I'm saying, like, when it got banned in Modern, it became a $7 card.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, but now we can play it in Commander.
Well, we could play it in Grand.
Yeah, sorry.
I think we could go on for genuinely hours about the ban list.
Hey,
but,
did you know that something else happened these past couple of weeks?
Uh,
Football!
well, the football season started. The best sport on earth, hockey, is starting back up.
Yes.
Let's see. Modern Horizons 3's been out for a while, so it can't be that.
F1 took a break.
We got some secret layers. I don't know if that's what you're
Danny
talking about.
Ricciardo, early retirement. Poor guy.
You know Duskmourn?
Wait, when did that come out?
I think like this last week.
Oh, you mean on top of the ban?
Well, you mean the whole thing that we just... Yeah, Duskmourn came out. It's crazy to talk about, like, the fact that, well, I know that we all joke about perma-spoiler season and all that, but Duskmourn did just come out. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to praise one thing about Duskmourn that I think a lot of people aren't talking about. Mikey, have you noticed that Duskmourn doesn't have as many commanders as the last set did?
Thank you, Wizards!
Yeah, I'll keep it a stack with you. It is slightly sad for someone like me, whose entire job on this channel is to brew decks, because it's like, oh, there aren't as many new commanders to brew around, but that's a-okay.
But did you have fun brewing that random uncommon that just absolutely bit it and then only had one trick pony going on?
You mean Arabella?
No, she's not the
the absolute truth.
She's not. No, she's good.
No, I genuinely am happy that Duskmourn is down to, I think, 20 legal commanders in the main set.
It's like 18 in total.
If not slightly more than that, whereas I felt like it was like 45 in Bloomborough and it was like 45 in OTJ, you know?
Yeah, somebody did a video on it I just watched last week. It was like 20-something in Bloomborough. You had 30-something, I believe, in OTJ, and now we're down to like 18, which I think is a good number. Like,
I'm feeling we'll go back up for Death Race because it sounds like it's going to be like a multiplanar type thing again. But
No, we don't need it. No.
At any rate,
chill out.
As a horror fan, I love Duskmourn.
Chill out.
I said that when I originally made a video based on the first previews that we saw about this and the reveal. And this set completely lived up to it for me. I think this set's a ton of fun. There's a lot of really fun horror references. I love that enchantments are back in a new way with Eerie, right? With rooms. Rooms look like a ton of fun.
Oh, yeah.
You have new demon support, so there are going to be certain players that are happy. There's a new mono blue meme commander, so like who doesn't love that? There's another 5-color commander, so who doesn't love that? But no, I genuinely enjoy that. Like, I think what Duskmourn does well in some degrees is some of the mechanics that they picked for the set are mechanics that have a ton of support throughout Magic's history and not just this set. Like Delirium, right? Eerie adds rooms to Constellation, which is an already popular mechanic. Survival is a mechanic that works really well with just attacking or tapping things for effects. So that's a pretty that makes sense. So like some of these big mechanics, Manifest Dread is just
Manifest.
morph or disguise, so it plays off the same mechanics. Like I like that if you're building if you're building the Zimone commander deck that has landfall and Manifest Dread, you have access to all these disguise cards and all these morph cards. You know what I mean? Like I just like that a lot of these mechanics are really well supported, and then it's not just like, oh, here's a new mechanic that only has 6 cards. Good luck building a commander deck around
They
it.
did what I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought they were going to do back in Murders of Markov Karlov Manor, and they built upon some good.
Murders near Karlov.
Strategies. They built upon good strategies that were already in the mix of Magic's history and everything, and they just didn't really necessarily rename them or anything, but they just kind of gave them a new flavor in a way. Like the easiest one is the Dread Manifest. Like I think that one's really really cool. It is a better version of Manifest, but I think it's still you still can just build upon it rather than just like doing something completely different and it just absolutely just sucking.
The thing I think that makes it a lot better than I thought it was going to be was that you bin one of the cards, and that makes it so much better for a lot of decks.
Especially if you're playing in the Kadena precon, or if you built into that like I did, where it's in Sultai. Fun fact, I hear black is pretty fun with graveyards. So I mean, like
I heard it's decent.
like,
I mean,
you get to have a ton of support and fun in that kind of realm of things. I love that they brought back. I always love when they bring enchantment creatures into a set. I think that's great.
such a lot of really fun ones. The fears are interesting. I don't love them.
Okay.
I think the enduring creatures are all awesome. I think they're really cool. I love the idea of them dying and coming back as just enchantments.
I think that's fantastic.
Is such a good idea because it kind of gives them some staying power,
durability,
for their abilities. Hey, we got another copy of Exquisite Bloods. Who doesn't love that? And then I really love the Overlords. I think they're really interesting.
Yeah.
The impending mechanic and just the way that they work. I think what I like about them the best is if you're in a deck that cares about blinking things or copying things, like they're perfect for those kinds of decks because it's on enter and attack, so you kind of still get that privilege there. Like I love seeing these cycles of things that aren't just good at what they were intended to do. They work with a lot of other strategies.
Yeah.
And that makes me really happy. Not only because I love enchantments, so like obviously I'm over the moon about all the new enchantment creatures, but I'm really happy that they took a mechanic like Eerie, where they made this new keyword, and just made it Constellation Plus. Like they didn't change it; they just made it backwards compatible, but still good.
Yeah. What is that? What is a commander or a card that you're excited to build around, build in, put into?
Can we bring on the lights for a second? Just kidding.
Soapbox, here we go. No, just like a one or two. Give me
The single card in this set I think I'm the most excited for are 2 mono white cards that care about tokens, so everybody can just go ahead and mute the video now, and I'll tell you in the comments when I'm back to talking about reality again. But Toby Beastie Befriender is a card that when I looked at it, I knew it was going to be good, not only in Jetmir, and we'll talk more about.
So
my
now
love
moving on.
But how good I think it is in every token deck that includes white. Toby says whenever it enters, create a 4/4 white beast creature token with this creature can't attack or block alone, which is perfectly fine as a rider for making a 4/4 for 2 creatures for 3 mana. It says as long as you control 4 or more creature tokens you control have flying. That's massive upside. Like such a cool ability because it's like. I will be brewing Toby for the channel eventually, so we'll see what I do with it as just a mono white tokens commander. But I think this fits in every Selesnya tokens deck that's ever existed.
Yeah.
It will fit in every Boros token deck that's ever existed, and it will continue into all the 3 color combinations. Like I think this card is just very good.
Yes.
I have a tough time believing that this isn't just like another Adeline where like it fits in every single one of these decks because it's already paying you off for what you want to do. Anyway, the second card is actually a room, and I think it's
Yeah?
interesting
You
that.
sure? I couldn't tell. Are you very excited about it?
And the second card is actually a room, and I think the rooms are really interesting in their own rights. I think they're interesting because just like split spells, you can use them in different situations, right? For what happens. But I think just like with Toby, I think this room is probably going to get played in just about every token deck that can play it, and that's Doll Maker Shop and Porcelain Gallery. So on the Doll Maker Shop side, for 2 mana, you get an enchantment that says whenever one or more non-toy creatures attack an opponent, you make a toy artifact creature token. So you can get up to 3 per turn if you think about it, as long as you are attacking with the right creatures. Remember, you can do that for 2 mana, and then later you can unlock Porcelain Gallery, and Porcelain Gallery says creatures you control have base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. To me, this is almost a better coat of arms because you're not giving the buff to your opponents.
Yeah.
Like, this is a brutal ability because if you're thinking about it, even a couple 1/1 birds in the air now get even worse. Now you're thinking about 6/6s in the air, right?
Yeah.
This is one of those cards that I think just Porcelain Gallery alone is going to be worth it in a lot of decks. That if you can manage to use both sides, this just seems brutal. Also remember that the way split cards work is that their mana value on the battlefield is the combined of it. So if you have any way to, if there's anything that's a restriction on destroying or charting something based on its mana value, if you turn on both sides, now this is an 8 mana value permanent sitting on the battlefield that your opponents now have to potentially pay more for.
Yep.
Right? Or do more for. I know the meme is that I love my token decks, and I always will.
It's fine.
But I just love that we got 2 really interesting pieces of support in 2 really interesting ways.
One thing I do like about, actually, the biggest thing I like about the rooms specifically, is they put them under the enchantment umbrella rather than just like battles that we saw a couple years
By
ago.
making a new type, right?
Yeah.
Making a new type would have been okay, but it doesn't make it as...
good. It just doesn't make it as good.
That doesn't make it as backwards compatible, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Because like I had...
Look at another one. I mean, I know this isn't one I particularly want to talk about, but this is a room I think we'll see play.
I think it's fantastic.
Is a Dazzling Theater and Prop Room. So on the Dazzling Theater side, for 4 mana, you give all your creature spells Convoke, which is a great ability, especially when you're trying to go wide at all.
Yep.
But I think there's a lot of decks that are halfway interested in that. The first deck I could think of would be...
The
like,
Rim and Carlo guy. What's his
Or-
name?
or think about something like Esper Urza, which is going to have a lot of artifact tokens sitting around. Or if you're playing a go wide creatures deck, like if you're elves and in white, or you're I'm trying to think of a red white tribe that isn't just a tokens tribe, but goblins or
Well,
something
I was
like
thinking
that.
of like any creature that's like whenever you tap this, do X, Y, and Z. Perfect.
And then, on the prop room side, you just have untap each creature you control during each other player's untap step. Well, congratulations. Here's another copy of those effects that are really expensive. Now, the only problem, right, is this is in white and not in green.
Not in Seedborn Muse, yeah.
So that is the only reason it may not be as popular, because you can't play this in, like, Lathril Elves. You can't play this in Simic Elves, right?
I'm still fine with that, though, because, like, I mean, you just gave all your creatures vigilance without having to play
it in Bant Galadriel. And that's what I was going to...
I was about to say, like, you could just... It's so good. But yes, I love that they're enchantments. I wish the battles were something of that nature as well.
According to Mark Rose, we will get battles again.
Oh, yeah, okay. Like 5 years?
At some point.
5 years? I give them 5. From the time they came out. So we have, like, what, 3 years left?
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about a good card. You ready for this good card?
I thought we already mentioned 2 good cards.
Nah, shut your mouth. Go. Come on. We're gonna talk about it. Where is he at? Come on. Give me the red. Give me the red. Where's the red? Give me the red.
Grab the prize?
No. Give me the red. There he is. Look at this man.
The absolute horror that is Razorkin Needlehead.
Razorkin Needlehead. During your turn, Razorkin Needlehead has first strike. He's a 2/2.
Not bad.
He's a 2/2 for 2 red. It's pretty good on your turn having first strike. And then the bottom part is really what you're worried about. And it's whenever an opponent draws a card, Razorkin Needlehead does 1 damage to them. So it's a nice Nekuzar addition. It's also a nice, as I put him in, Nixilis. And man, this card puts in work.
Other than the obvious things about this card, which is it starts pinging opponents for drawing cards, Lucky, I want to bring quick attention to its type line, because I think it's very important.
Yes, it is.
This is a creature that's a human
Ooh.
and an assassin.
What?
Those are two really important types for two reasons. One,
They're good.
the meme that there's so many humans in the game, which here's just another really good human. But, Mikey, have any sets in the last year cared about assassins or made assassins more playable?
I feel like we just had an Assassin's Creed set. I think OTJ had some assassins.
Yes, OTJ had outlaws, which assassins are a part of. I think this is probably
in this color combination.
This is probably worth considering if you bought like the Olivia Precon.
Yep.
Or you built something like Jasper Flint. Like this feels good in a deck like that, right? Something
Jasper Flint.
where you're already playing the outlaws themselves. Like I think Needlehead's a great card even if it didn't have those two types, but having those two types I think makes it even better.
No, I agree 100%. That's why I wanted to bring it up. This card has so much playability, and not just the strategy that you want to play it in, but also just because it does a ton of work in good creature types. And it's cheap. It's very cheap, 2 mana cost. Like, yes, it's double red. If you're playing in a 3-color combo, it's a little bit tougher to get out, but really not. Oh, wait, we lost Dockside. Never mind. Sorry, red players.
Another card I really want to talk about, because I think it's really interesting,
way too interesting.
Is the new Kaido. Kaido Bane of Nightmares. One of us in editing will put these cards all up on the screen. I say one of us because who knows who it's going to be.
It's gotta be me. I already told you I was going to.
This is the first Planeswalker we have with ninjutsu on it. So the reason it has ninjutsu is because during your turn, Kaito is a 3/4 ninja with hexproof. So you can ninjutsu it in for 1 a blue and a black, and it's a 4 loyalty Planeswalker for 4 mana that has 3 honestly really great abilities. Its +1 gives you an emblem that buffs all ninjas by +1/+1. Its 0 surveils you 2, and then you can draw a card for each opponent who's lost life this turn, which is pretty great in a ninja deck that's trying to get in sneaky. And then the -2 says, tap target creature, put 2 stun counters on it.
Oh, so good.
I don't see a single piece of downside on this Planeswalker.
It costs 4 mana to get out. If you don't ninjutsu it, which you're gonna.
But even in a world where you're hard casting this for 4 mana in a ninjas deck, congratulations, you have a +1/+1 buff on all your ninjas.
All I can think about
and you could do that every turn. You could just start stacking buffs on all your ninjas.
All I'm thinking about is, man, it'd be really cool to bring Yuriko back.
And remember, emblems stay around.
Yeah,
right?
they do.
So a ninja that you then ninjutsu in will get that buff from all those emblems. Think about ninjutsuing in like Nashi Moonsage, which is a 3/2 already, and it comes in as like a 6/5 because you got a couple of these emblems laying around. You absolutely meme it and put it in what's its name, the Silent Blade
Oni.
Yeah, or whatever, the big one.
Yeah.
The big 6 mana ninjutsu
like
one
4/4
that comes in.
like that,
that comes in as like a 7/6 or something. Like, congratulations, it comes in as like a 10 power creature.
I need to know that what it is, but yeah, no. What's really cool is you can stack these emblems, and I think this is why probably the first time that you can get an emblem from a Planeswalker on a plus ability rather than having to literally.
I also do really like that it has hexproof. It is actually important
on your turn. Yeah, on your turn. Which is fantastic. Like
again, I like that we're taking Planeswalker design and we're actually doing something with it. That it's not just, oh, here's another Planeswalker. I like that. I think it's interesting because it gives Wizards more room to have fun with these instead of just
here's another
Planeswalker that does the same thing on her +1 and the same thing on the -1.
I love that you said her, as in we already know who we're talking about.
We already know who we're talking about.
Yay, Chandra.
I want to shout out the land cycle.
Which one? There's 2 good ones.
Uh,
Sorry, there's one good one and one that's okay in standard.
We'll talk about that after the podcast. I'm just kidding. We have the new start to a new land cycle, which I don't know what people are calling them, so I have no idea what to say.
I want to put in. I got the name for it. You call them the activate only if you have the basic land type that it says.
Would you like me to tell you what I think my guess is what they're going to be called?
What? Because I'm dumb.
The Verges, because they all have Verge in the name.
Oh.
Which I didn't realize until just now. Shout out. Anyway, so they're all allied colored lands, which is important. Allied colors tend to be some of the best 2-color combinations. And they all have the ability where they will tap for 1 color no matter what. And then if you control either of the allied colors' basic land types, then you get the other color. This is very good. This is very good for 2-color decks. This is very good for 3-color decks. Here's the thing I find the most interesting about this land cycle.
Go on.
We could technically get 20 lands out of this.
We should.
Because if you think about it, you could do all 10 of them this way in the allied colors, and then you could flip the colors, where instead of Flood Farm Verge tapping for a white and then tapping for a blue if you control either, you could have it tap for a blue and then tap for...
Again, we should, and if we don't, I'm sending a mean email to Mark.
You could also technically do this with the enemy colors as well.
Yes.
You don't have to just do this with the allied colors.
color.
So there's a lot of ways you could do this. My hope is that either in Death Race or the set after it, that Wizards finishes this cycle.
Yeah.
We have seen, other than the random land cycles like Battle for Zendikar or Amonkhet, where they never finish those land cycles, over the last couple of years, right, Wizards always seems to finish them up, right? Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow had that land cycle.
The more lands, yeah.
Dominaria United reprinted the Painlands. Brothers War finished it off.
Yes.
You start to see that now they're really finishing these up, and I hope they do that, because I think we need more good dual-colored lands that aren't shock lands.
I was about to say, at this point, stop reprinting the shock lands if you're going to make good lands like this.
Because I think there's more ways to, like I said, and we could technically, that'd be 20. Well,
Yeah, that would.
Technically there could be 40, right? Because...
No, because if you do 5 with this, flip it, it's another 5, that's 10. You do the allied colors.
So I do the allied colors, right? That's 5. And then you could do all the enemy colors, so that's 10. That's right. And then flip them, so it's 20. Okay.
You had the math. Your math was right.
I had to pull out a magic card to look at the back. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. Look, the yellow.
At any rate, so yeah, I mean, that's 20 lands technically you could have just from this idea alone. But you're right, they did also have a common land cycle that I don't think is terrible.
No, it's fine.
It's not going to be as useful in Commander as it is in other formats, but it's still nice they continue to make basic, cheap lands that tap for 2 colors.
I agree.
I want to talk about... I think it's funny because every conversation I had about Valgavoth Slayer, everybody was like, this is the first enchantment land. And I was like, no... Urza's Saga was. And they were like, what? And I was just like, yeah, it was an enchantment land. I think Valgavoth Slayer is not going to get played by a lot of decks. I'll tell you where exactly it's going to get played in. Enchantment decks, and any deck that cares about Delirium or getting certain types into their graveyard, like that new Winter Precon, or a Delirium-style deck where you're trying to get things into your graveyard. But I think it's an interesting land because it comes in, you pick a color, and it just taps for that color. But it is an enchantment, so it'll trigger Constellation. It'll trigger all those. But then it's an enchantment in your graveyard. It counts for all that glitters. It counts for Ethereal Armor. It counts for all of those abilities. It's a land that I think we'll see some play, but it's not going to be like every deck plays Valgavoth Slayer.
It's funny that you say that because you're thinking about Delirium. I'm thinking about Loot from OTJ, Extra Bonus Sheet, whatever that's called. I loved that card. It was just so much to handle and whatnot.
Hey, it's another way to get a card in the graveyard that could potentially feed the Goyf deck from Modern Horizons 3, right? There's a lot of ways that you can look at Valgavoth Slayer. I like when we make dual-typed lands because they allow, again, to play into some of these more synergies. The one thing I want to say before we finish our conversation about these new lands from Duskmourn is I love that when we get new cards now, especially these lands, we're getting borderless versions of them right away, which helps the people who want the fancier versions to go for the borderless versions, and it pulls the regular versions of the lands down a little bit on the cost scale.
I'm a little surprised that these aren't huge price-wise. Like, not like, I'm not thinking $50-$60, but I'm really surprised they're not like double digits, to be honest.
They might. And the only reason I think they might not at the moment is because Standard has a ton of other lands to use, but maybe they'll go up once things rotate. The other hope is that with how much anytime a card has multiple versions, right, more versions of it are out there, right? I know we don't talk about it a ton, but if you notice, any Standard set now, if a card has a regular and a borderless version, you have 4 versions of that card that exist. The regular and the borderless, if it's a rare, it'll have the pre-release promo, and then promo packs exist. So there's normally 4 of them.
Yes.
Now you get even better, right, when lands have a 3rd version, or like the Streets of New Capenna, right? All the Triumphs had 3 versions: the regular, the city frame, and then the borderless frame.
Yeah.
So there was more copies of them out there. But I like that, again, I've said before and I'll say it again, I love borderless cards. They're one of my favorite frames that we have, and so I love it when I can get a card in borderless first, but I also love when a showcase frame looks really cool. And I think Duskmourn has two interesting showcase frames. You have the kind of movie-looking frame,
Which I don't like it.
which I don't like the frame, but I like a lot of the art.
Yes, the art looks cool.
Whoever edits this will pull up Chainsaw here. It's a card that looks really interesting. I love this 80s TV look to the card. Chainsaw's an interesting card, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's killer, but
We don't have to talk
pun
about
intended.
it.
But I
Yeah.
think it's interesting. A card that I think we should talk about
No.
because
Get out of here. It's not even good.
it was going to happen eventually.
Golly, this card sucks.
Is Meathook Massacre 2. Meathook Massacre is back, and it's back. I wouldn't say it's better than ever.
No.
I still think it's a good card. I just don't think it's as good as the Meathook Massacre.
I don't know what they were doing when they made this card. Were they just not like...
They were making a sequel to the Meathook. We don't have to talk about it. I just wanted to mention, though,
No, we can talk about it. It's
as an
fine.
example of a card that I think looks really cool in that frame. I still think the regular art looks better.
Oh, I think it looks cool.
But you
So
have a double X 4 black legendary enchantment that says when it comes in, each player sacrifices X creatures. That's interesting on its own. Mm-hmm. Not as good as a straight -X, but still interesting. And then whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 3 life. If you do, bring it back with a finality counter. And then I think some of the best text on it is whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, they may pay 3 life. If they don't, return it under your control with a finality counter on it.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting card. I like that the top half of the ability can get your things back to potentially get more aristocrat style triggers to get more different things. On the bottom one, you could potentially take your opponent's things. It's kind of like that Athreos style effect where you could,
I was about to say this is like a cooler Athreos effect because you can basically steal their creatures, whereas Athreos is just your creatures.
I think it's interesting. It's an interesting style of ability. I think it's something worth talking about. The other showcase frame that we got for the set is what they call the double exposures.
I don't know if I liked this.
If we didn't put it on the screen earlier when we talked about Toby, let's pull up another one here just so we could see it. And let's pull up a card we haven't talked about already.
Let's talk about the Mind Skinner.
I was gonna say let's talk about everybody's favorite shirtless elf, but let's talk about the Mind Skinner. Mind Skinner is a 3 blue legendary enchantment creature nightmare. It cannot be blocked, and if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. Mikey, out of curiosity, did you know that the Mind Skinner said if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent and not when it dealt damage to an opponent?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't until now, so that's probably
Yeah. Dude, this card's awesome, honestly. I don't care what anybody says.
This double exposure flame is wild.
Oh, it's
and
really
I
cool, too.
love it.
Yeah.
I think my favorite of the double exposure frames is Valkavoth. It looks so cool.
Mine would be the Wanderer.
With the Wanderers is pretty cool. Marvin's is also pretty cool.
Yeah, Marvin's weird.
But and then they have the textured finishes, so they're all black and red.
I like that one.
But I really like the Japanese showcases. I think these are really cool. Here's why I think they're really funny. So first on the screen, we're gonna pull up Enduring Vitality, a pretty deer
That is Bambi, off-brand Bambi.
on a card. This is a Cryptolith Right, but on a creature. This is a
So good.
great card. It's gonna hold its value.
It's in Raga Draga.
And then you get the Overlords, like Overlord of the Balmerk here. This just menacing, horror-looking thing. And I love the dichotomy here between these cute animals. Like, Enduring Courage has a little dog on it. Enduring Curiosity has a cat. These are so cute versus these Avatar
Overlord
horrors.
of the
that just-
Boiler Bulgers.
I love the look of that card.
This is just like, what the heck, man?
But I love it. I actually got to pull one. I actually pulled the Enduring Vitality one, or the Innocence one, which is the white one. It does look pretty cool.
Good job. Proud of you.
But I've been enjoying Duskmourn so far. My favorite card to use that I haven't had a chance to use a lot of Duskmourn cards yet, but the one I'm excited to try out is Twitching Doll, just mainly because the buy a box art for it, which will be up on the screen now, stares into my soul, and I don't know how I feel about it. But it's a
like it.
2-mana 2/2 artifact creature spider toy. You can tap to add a mana of any color. I like that it's not just green, right? It's a mana of any color, so this makes this useful in a lot of decks.
Raga Draga.
But when you tap it, you put a nest counter on it. And then as someone clarified on my short that I released last week, the bottom ability says sacrifice Twitching Doll. You make a 2/2 green spider for each counter on Twitching Doll.
What did you
not
think?
nest counter. I thought it said for each nest counter on it. I thought it was like a you tap it for mana and you build it up, right? And then you sack it for all the spiders that you made by tapping it. As it turns out, when you read the card, you understand the card. So,
What?
I think what I like the most about Twitching Doll is
That's nutty.
it's a great mana dork, right? Tapping for a mana of any color. But then, if you get to the late game and you want just a bunch of creature ETBs, or you need something else, well, cool. You can just sack it for all the tokens and get value. I think this is a really fun card. I love seeing Wizards print these 2-mana mana dorks that are actually really useful.
Yeah.
Other thing that I think is good about Twitching Doll is it has 2 types, artifact and creature, so that is important, again,
And
for
there's
Delirium
2
decks.
subtypes, spider and toy. No, I'm just kidding.
For that. It is a spider, so hey, if there's the Ishkanath players out there, congratulations, you have another spider card that actually matters.
What's the spider from Lord of the Rings?
Shalab.
Shalab. I almost said Chernobyl.
Or if you're the spider players that I like the best playing, what is it, Thantis from that the Grixis one that forces your opponents to attack you or whatever.
Hang on. What?
Oh man,
Pull this guy up. I'm so confused.
oh no, I would not remember this. I'm sorry, friends.
A-N.
I think that's what his name is.
We're gonna find out today on the next episode of Thantis the War Weaver.
Thantis the War Weaver, a Jund command that says all creatures attack each combat if able, and if a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, you put a counter on Thantis. But it's just a way to play Jund spiders instead of just Golgari, right? But I think it's an interesting card, and the fact that all creatures have to attack is just kind of fun, right? Forcing everybody into combat.
But anyways, I think that's a really cool card. It's not my favorite card from the set, clearly, but it's still good. I'm glad it was the promo.
One of my favorite uncommons in the set, because it's a card that I've got to watch a little bit in Standard, but it's a card that I think is really cool, is Sheltered by Ghosts. This is a 2-mana aura. It says enchant creature you control. When it enters, you exile up to 1 target non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So this is a kind of like a Banishing Light style effect, right? But it says enchanted creature gets +1/+0, lifelink, and ward 2. So not only are you coming down and doing this ossification style effect where you're taking something for as long as it's down,
good job using 2 different cards for that.
you give the creature lifelink and ward 2. Like, this is so good. Like, I think this is really cool to give you more removal in an aura style deck. The one that I think pairs really nice is, and it sits right next to it in the alphabetical order, or the rubric order to it, is Shard Mage's Rescue. This is a 1-mana aura, another uncommon. You have flash. You can flash it into enchanted creature you control. As long as it enters the battlefield this turn, enchanted creature has hexproof, and then it just gives the creature +1/+1. I love this because this is a way for an enchantress deck to give a creature hexproof, still get all your constellation triggers and all your cast triggers, but protect that creature from that. To me, I find it interesting. Here's a way to give a creature hexproof just for 1 turn, and then after that, well, you just have a buff on that creature, and you have you get all your constellation triggers, you get all your enchantress cast triggers. Like I like it.
I think it's fantastic.
You would be very unsurprised to know that both of these cards made me really want to put them in Sithis again, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay, I'm glad.
No one at the table hated Sithis, so I don't expect.
I only hated it when I was the only one trying to kill it.
But I love how much. I want to talk about one more card, and see if Mikey can guess why I want to talk about this card.
Because it says Delirium.
No, it's a black uncommon. It's called Let's Play a Game. It's a 4-mana black sorcery with Delirium. It says choose one. If there are 4 more card types among card types in your graveyard, you choose more than one instead. The effects are more or less mediocre. Creatures your opponent's control get -1/-1 until end of turn. Each opponent discards 2 cards, or each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. They're not bad effects. For 4 mana, it seems like a lot. The reason I love this card is because I love Saw. Saw's one of my favorite horror franchises. And this is a Saw reference, so I'm happy to see it on a card. I don't think the card's terrible.
No.
In fact, I think it's half decent in a discard deck. It's not the best thing we've ever seen, but it's just cool to see Saw get a reference in the set.
I really haven't seen anything in this set that made me go, wow, that is absolutely busted. How dare you make that? Which I think I'm okay with.
I'm trying to think if there's anything that I can genuinely say that I think is, like, super broke. And I really do.
Maybe the demon?
Besides maybe Demonic Console, which can go get you a demon, or if you have Delirium, can go get anything. It's just another copy of...
Demonic Tutor.
let's talk about the demon I think you're referring to. Is this the one you're referring to?
I am.
Doomsday Excruciator, a 6 black mana creature demon with flying. This is when it enters. If it was cast, each player exiles all but the bottom 6 cards of their library face down. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card. I don't expect that this card isn't going to get paired. I don't think this is just going to get played. I think this is going to get played with some way for you to nuke your opponent's libraries after this
I was
happens.
gonna say, I hope you're playing into a mill deck.
Like this plus a windfall, or like this plus something that's going to force your opponents to draw all their cards in their deck and just win the game
I
on the
think
spot.
you would die first unless you have.
Well, I guess maybe not windfall.
I was like, wait a minute, hang on.
How would you get everybody to
Cautious,
draw?
hideous laughter.
How would you get everybody to draw? Oh, I guess that would work too. I would say, how could you get everybody to draw 6 or mill 6 and then just pass the turn? But anyway, you see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
A way to basically just have everybody lose before you have the chance to lose. I don't think it's broken. I think it's fun. I think it's a ton of fun.
Yeah. And that's like the only thing I can think of that's like super high.
We talked about the enduring. Like I love enduring courage, the red one.
It's good.
This I think is going to see a lot of play. Whenever another creature enters, it gets +2/+0 and haste until end of turn. This is a card that's going to see a lot of play in a lot of decks.
That's gonna be gross in token decks.
Because it just basically turns all your setup turns into just really brutal turns when they come down with haste. I can't think of any other cards that like really make me look sideways and go, why would you?
Kona's cool. It's not necessarily like I look sideways.
Kona
at
is a combo piece.
Yeah.
It will be used. Kona is a legendary beast survivor, 4 mana for a 4/3 that says, beginning your second main phase, this is the survival mechanic. If it was tapped, you may put a permanent from your hand on the battlefield. This will get cheated.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. This plus like Eladamri from Modern Horizons 3, or this plus anything that allows your creatures to tap for mana, will inevitably
Yeah.
cheat something in the battlefield. Don't get me wrong.
Dylan from the Play to Win podcast, he's built a CEDH deck around Kona.
I guess we
It's
should
pretty
always
sweet.
we should mention the Leyline of Mutation plus Morophon, mess. That Leyline Mutation's a 4 mana Leyline, so just like every Leyline, if it's in your starting hand, it'll come on the battlefield at the beginning of the game.
Throw
It
it.
says you may pay Wooburg rather than pay the cost of all spells that you cast. Remember that Morophon says that all spells you cast cost Wooburg less, so effectively making.
Oh, big girl.
My daughter's in the other room crying. I can only imagine what for. She's having a day,
Oh boy.
That's A-okay.
Yeah.
Mikey, let's wrap this up because I have a feeling that is a noise that we're going to be able to hear on the recording.
It's all good.
Is there anything you want to talk about for Duskmourn as
I
we
will
wrap
say
this
you
up?
can scroll back up to the white and talk about, or not really talk about
The
just-
wit?
The wit. Keep going. It's one of the first cards you actually see. No, wait, no, it's not. Continue, go down. It's the Wanderer I'm going to talk about. Where did? Oh, she's down there. Wandering
The
Rescuer.
Wandering Rescuer.
I think this is another cool card. It's the, I don't know what they're calling it. The desparked non-planeswalker no more. I actually think this one's pretty sweet.
So we have a 5 mana 3/4 with Flash and Convoke, Double Strike, and all other tap creatures you control have hexproof. I don't know how I feel about the Wandering Rescuer as a commander.
No,
But I think she's a really interesting piece for a lot of decks, especially decks where you care about tapping things. This could be interesting in a Convoke style deck if you're really trying to convoke creatures out or use Convoke. This could be really good for that. A great body, right? A 3/4 with Double Strike for 5 mana is a great body for what she's trying to do. She is a human, so that matters. She is a samurai, which is a thing.
And she also has Convoked as well, so like if you want to tap something oh my gosh, I just realized, holy cow, you can do so many things with this thing. If somebody's targeting your commander, you can tap that, play this, give it the hexproof, win the game.
Oh my gosh, we broke this mechanic.
Win the game. I don't even know why I didn't think about that. Anyways, and maybe want to make a white weenies deck, or never mind, I'm not going to say that next thing. I'm just going to move on and say, maybe want to make a white weenies deck. We'll say about it off camera. You don't
Let's
wanna
not get canceled. Anyway.
Exactly.
Like I said,
cool cards.
I've been really enjoying Duskmourn so far. Plenty of content to come on the channel, so we're not done with Duskmourn by any means.
I will say this is a set that needed to happen this year because it's a set with an interesting art style / theme, but with cards that aren't overly just absolutely bonkers. And I think that's fine. I think it's perfectly fine.
Just to button up our first thoughts on Duskmourn, I want to talk just a teeny bit about the future of Magic over the next couple months.
Ew.
Just we'll obviously be hopefully doing some more episodes of the podcast before
we
this
will?
happens, but yeah, let's talk about what's to come. November, we have Foundations, a set that I think both of us at least are a little bit excited about. A set that's going to hopefully have a lot of reprints and be an interesting set that's going to be illegal and standard for a long time. We'll talk more about Foundations when we get there because we really don't know a ton.
When does that come out?
That's coming out in November.
Okay.
Supposedly in January we're getting Innistrad Remastered. That could be kind of fun, right? To see a lot of those Innistrad cards reprinted. Potentially some new frames, right? Retro frames like they did with Ravnica and Dominaria Remastered. There could be new Boros versions of Innistrad cards.
Actually, honestly, I hope they do the double feature on all of them. I think that'd be fantastic.
What a fun time double feature was.
That's
and then
fine.
in
It was the
February we
first
get
remaster.
the Death Race set, which we don't know too much about.
Which is fine as well.
So those are the next more important things coming up. But we'll talk about that more later. I just really wanted to mention that just so that way we can talk about slightly about what's coming up. We of course secret layers all over the place.
Yeah, we saw the Marvel stuff. It's cool. Okay, moving on. Sorry, I just glazed over that.
Who doesn't love it? Apparently, the end of October is going to be a bunch of panels looking at first sets for things like Marvel and Foundations. So looks like October will be the best time to be a Magic player, I guess. But Mikey, do you have any other thoughts to lay on the people
No, I
before
think
we let them go
I think a lot of people are gonna have
and
fun with
fulfill our contractual obligation to talk about the ban list?
We wrote the paper.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to have fun with this set. I think if you went and got any one of the precons, I think you're going to have fun with them. Do be wary, though. They are different. They're just different. They're not just like your standard play card win game. So I think it's fine. I think it's good. Like I said just a second ago, I think it's a set with an interesting theme that, definitely attracts a lot of people. I think it came at the right time, being close to the Halloween season that we're about to get into, and a lot of people like the horror genre of films. So I think it's great too. And I think just simple. It's a simple set. It's a very simple set with the mechanics, the cards, what they do. There's nothing too flashy, too crazy. I think it's great.
Final thoughts for me in this episode of Duskmourn. I'm here for it. I think the set's really fun. There's a lot of support for a lot of different archetypes. I have a gut feeling that if you have a deck that kind of falls under one of the main archetypes, there's probably something in this set for you.
Yep.
And if there isn't something in this set specifically for you, there's probably a removal spell in this set that you should think about trying. There's a couple really interesting uncommon
You should play Exercise.
You got Exercise, you got Withering Torment, you've got
I just saw
Unwanted
it.
Remake for the Manifest Dread. There's a lot of interesting removal spells in this deck that I think people are going to try. And so at minimum, there's probably something from this set, if not the dual lands, right, that you can check out. Other than that, thank y'all so much for watching. Feel free to check out the other content on the channel. Your boys on the channel 5 days a week, brewing them decks. Gameplay is coming.
I was about to say, can we say it?
And we're stoked. I have a feeling, depending on when this goes live, gameplay may already have happened on the channel. But the point is that it's something we've seriously talked about. It's something we've talked about for a long time. If you remember, I put out a poll a few weeks ago, and it was overwhelmingly the thing that people wanted to see the most. And believe me, it's the thing we've wanted to deliver the most. But it's something that takes commitment, it takes finesse, and we just wanted to make sure that we did it right. The other thing that we wanted to do was we didn't want to just do it once and then stop. We want to make sure that it's something we can do semi-consistently for you guys and that we can figure out what's the best avenue to deliver it for you. We think for the moment it'll probably be live streams.
Yep. Live streams.
And then we'd like to cut those live streams down
Okay.
and maybe try to edit it and make it a little bit more fun. That's something we'll be workshopping on the back end. But that's coming, and we're excited.
I will say, like, the first few things that we do with gameplay and whatnot will probably be like just our own decks. We won't really have like a theme, or we won't be playing with a lot of new cards or anything like that. So really what I'm kind of hoping for, at least with the first maybe couple of episodes with it, is you just get to know our play group and how we play and just what is on the table when we sit down, and why Millzy's brain is so weird when he talks about all the decks that he brews.
We obviously want to have fun, and we want to play the game well. We want to have our play group come out as well, but we also want to make sure it's watchable as well. You know, there will be side conversation, there will be jokes that will be happening. We're not just going to turn ourselves to be robots because we're playing on camera.
I play cards.
But at the same time, we're going to make sure that we're getting things right. We're going to make sure that we're representing the board state well, the rules are being followed.
Which we're just never going to play Bello, ever.
I love that card so much.
Same.
We are definitely a play group that tries our best to, when we get a question that we don't understand, agree as a table on how we want to interact with it, just because that's the fairest way to do it. Yeah, I'm excited for gameplay. I'm excited to win/lose some games on camera. It should be fun. Win and or lose.
I'm excited
I don't know how I'm
to
going to both win and lose a game on camera, but it's possible.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. I'm excited to scoop at instant speed. No, I'm just kidding.
But that's all for us. We're stoked to be back, both in podcast form and in gameplay form, and we will catch you guys next time.